Okay, Grant. So you said like you are using coffee ground for your compost.
That's right.
Okay, and you mentioned that you actually use warm casting and mix with the with the with the spal to actually develop a compost.
That's right.
Yeah.
And there's plenty of microbial activity in here. Even though the coffee grounds are still green, we haven't composted them yet. They sat around for a bit.
You have 2 buckets of worm casting.
Worm castings, that's
and then
right.
you will spread this worm casting over here.
That's right.
And then what else you are going to mix?
Then we're going to add some hardwood mulch in there, and that hardwood mulch is going to be our fluffing material to help create some air pockets in there, and help make sure that we get enough drainage in the pile. And so we put the hardwood mulch in there, and then we're going to put a little bit more coffee on top.
Okay.
And then we can blend it with the Bobcat. And because we're using the Bobcat with a 3/4 cubic yard bucket, our piles are 8 cubic yards each.
Okay.
So that's the batch size. So whenever we start a pile of compost, I know it's going to be 8 cubic yards to begin with.
Okay, and then you will develop that compost pile and follow through front pile composting process.
That's right. Yeah. And then because it's going to get real hot, so after we mix the 8 cubic yards and we do all of this, we'll start hitting high temps, and then we'll go through the normal composting procedure.
Okay. But the worms that are in your worm casting may not survive at that temperature.
They're not going to survive. Yeah, so they sacrifice themselves for the
babies.
pile. Yeah.
Baby
So
worm.
yeah, and some of them may hang out a little bit. For the most part, they're going to go away.
I feel like the place that we are studying here is a concrete slab. Do we need to have a concrete slab? Like you have all over concrete slab or only this area?
Well, right now we have just this area, but this is a 20-foot by 30-foot concrete slab that we poured, and we poured it specifically for mixing with the Bobcat. With our weather here, relying upon like a crushed concrete or an aggregate pad to mix and blend compost is it's just a lot of work, because you get a lot of the material works into the pile that you don't want. And so having a big scrapable surface like this is super, super important. So we'll batch our 8 cubic yard piles of compost on here initially to make sure we mix all the ingredients in. But then all of our other mixes, like our raised bed mix, we'll also mix on this pad to make sure that we're not getting in native soil into any of the mixes.
I agree with you. In Louisiana, when it rains, it really rains.
Yep.
And when it rains, it will be so muddy. And if you are using those big equipments, it will be hard to operate. So can you show us how you mix your worm casting?
Yeah, so whenever we mix the small ingredients in, we'll do an initial layer of material. We'll put any of the amendments down, and then we'll top it, kind of make a little bit of a lasagna layer. That one, when we go to mix it with the bucket, the materials will flow better that way. So we've got our 10 cubic yards, our 10 gallons of worm castings.
Like throw a little bit, like
and we'll just spread it out throughout the whole thing. That's it. And then we do the same process with our other blends when we're adding in the worm castings or a crab meal product or anything else. We do it the exact same way.
Okay. So after worm casting, what else you add here?
Then we're going to pick up, we're going to get about 1 cubic yard of our hardwood mulch, and that's going to be our fluffing material.
Okay.
And so previously when we screened the worm castings, all the big overs, that was the hardwood mulch that we're pulling back out of that material.
Okay.
And it will go back into the composting process and get used again. So we'll do the hardwood mulch. We're going to do a little bit more coffee, and that's going to create 8 cubic yards, and then we're going to come in here and we're going to blend it up with the Bobcat. Now that we've turned the pile on our mixing slab, the next step for us is actually we're going to bring it over to our staging area where it's going to be going through all the different composting cycles. And then once we bring it to that area, checking the temperature is going to be very important. So we mixed it today, and then I want to be looking for certain temperatures in about 2 to 4 days on average. We're going to be checking the temperatures. The temperature that we're looking for is in the 135 to 150 range. We want to do 135 at minimum, so we use the probe to do that. And then it's important when we use the probe is that we actually put that probe in on different layers of the pile while we're doing it. So the best area initially we're going to go to, and we're going to want to check the center of the pile to ensure that we're getting proper temperature. Now we just turned the pile, so it has not gotten hot yet. So this heat is definitely going to spike for sure over the next 3 days. But it's also important to use the probe in other areas of the pile because you're going to have different temperatures.
So Grant, you mentioned that you will maintain certain temperature. So you also mentioned before to me that you are doing the torn pile composting.
That's right.
So you are not aerating this pile over there.
Right. We're not doing any type of forced aeration.
Mm-hmm.
We're actually turning it with we're rebuilding the pile with the Bobcat.
Okay, that's good point. So the temperature that you maintain according to torn pile composting is you will leave the pile at 135 degree.
That's right.
For 3 days, and then you will
then we'll turn it again. So the most that we would turn a pile in a given week would be an average of 2 turns per week on average, depending on weather. And so if it's a big rain event, we'll let the pile dry out a little bit, let the area dry out a little bit, and then we'll turn it. So we may not hit it twice a week for 3 weeks for 6 turns like magic. It depends on the weather, of course, but that would be the ideal.
Okay, so you turn for a total of 5 times.
5 to 6 times is what we try to do. That's right.
That's great. So when you are measuring the temperature, you say like you are measuring at the center of the pile and then at different location?
That's right. You want to put the probe in at the core, and that's going to be your hottest part. But in order to make sure that you've put the right ingredients in your composting pile, you want to check all the other areas as well, because you don't want just one part of the pile getting temperature. You want other parts of the pile to get in temperature as well. And that'll be an indicator on your turning methods. It'll be an indicator on your feedstock recipe. So you'll get the right carbon-nitrogen ratio. And it's just going to help you out to make sure that you're getting the full profile of what that pile looks like temperature-wise.
Okay. What happens if this pile is very moist? Can you maintain that temperature if there's a lot of water?
Typically, if it's going to be saturated, it may go anaerobic and it may not get as hot. Remember, composting is an anaerobic process, and so if it's too wet, it's not going to hit the temperatures that we're really looking for. So that's the other reason, again, why we put that hardwood mulch in there. That's going to help drain the pile after a large rain event. Now, if we know that we're getting a lot of rain, we will throw a tarp over the piles because a saturated pile is not good for composting.
That's great. So moisture content, carbon-nitrogen ratio, and then the particle size is very much important for an effective composting process. Yeah, I saw like you have really nice equipment. Like how much it costs and what is the life of this equipment?
So a Bobcat like this, brand new, is about $70,000-$80,000. We typically buy used equipment about half the life. So this particular unit cost us about $35,000. It had a little bit under 2,000 hours left. And to answer your question, the life of the machine should be about 4,000 hours. And that's an important part because just like if you're driving a car, you're going to look at your odometer and you're going to look at your mileage, and that's going to give you an indicator in the life of that car, but the equipment's typically hours. And so when we're figuring out the pricing of our composting, we have to count for every hour on the machine. And so we know that the cost of operating the equipment per hour is about $15 to $20 per hour. So if we take an hour to mix one compost pile, we've got about $15 in it as far as the equipment goes. And that covers all the maintenance and everything for the equipment.
If you have to use the same equipment for like a pre-composted material and after that have to use for like a composted material, how do you clean and sanitize your equipment?
Right, so depending on how dirty it is, we'll either use just a regular garden hose with a pressure nozzle on it. If it's really dirty, we will hit it with a pressure washer to ensure that, because the bucket does get caked on material. The tracks get material in the tracks, and we don't want to put any contaminated material into the material that we're about to sell to the consumer. And like any farm, we also use the equipment for other activities. And so when we do that, we definitely clean the equipment off.
Fantastic. So that's a really good point you mentioned about that. You are cleaning the bucket, and not only the bucket, you are also pressure washing your tracks, because you are actually driving that on sometimes on the pile, and you don't want to contaminate your final compost. That's a really good.
That's right, and it's good maintenance to keep those tracks clean every now and then too, to make sure you're not getting any material jammed up in there.
Awesome. So Grant, you mentioned that for a product like potting mix, you will actually use and add some supplement and perlite, and then use this blender to mix it.
That's right. When we do real precise mixing, such as with perlite is so lightweight and fluffy, we actually can't mix this on the mixing slab because the wind will come and blow it away. And also when we use more expensive amendments, like blood meal or green sand or anything like that, we really want to use the mixer for those blends. And so we'll load this machine with the smaller bucket. This bucket also hooks up to the Bobcat, so we're using the same piece of equipment. So we'll load the machine. It can hold up to 1 cubic yard at a time. We'll put all the ingredients in, and it'll blend it just like your KitchenAid mixer in your kitchen at home.
And then you have the packing. Over there, and you pack it in the bag.
Yeah, and then we can put it in a cubic foot bag from there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you show the blending machine?
Yeah. Let me. So what I can do is I can pour some perlite in there, and then you can get up and then just and then you can. Well, you can get up and film it. So let me.
From which side? On the side?
I would film it from right here. Here, let me give it an initial mix, and that way the dust settles for you. Wow. It's still a little dusty. Well, the wind's blowing that way, so yeah. Whenever you're ready, I'll turn it on for you.
Ready. Is there any specific ratio of perlite and
for this particular mix, we do 10% by volume of the perlite to a cubic yard of the material. Yeah, so depending on the mix and whatever the recipe calls for, we may use green sand or blood meal or chicken litter or any of the other fertilizers that are available. We will do custom mixing for folks, so they may give me the ingredients that they're looking for, and then we'll use this machine to blend it all. So that way we know that we get a precise mixing.
Okay, so you will, where do you purchase your chicken litter and then blood meal?
Right now, the chicken litter we actually use from our own chickens off the farm, but that can be sourced from a chicken house. We'd have to, in order to use that chicken litter from a chicken house, we'd actually have to pre-compost it ourselves before we use it as an ingredient. But the blood meal and the green sand, most of those ingredients are widely available.
Okay. You said like you also may use crab meal.
Oh, and the crab meal as well. Yeah. So, did you want to? Can you? Do you want to start that as a new question, or?
No, you use a crab meal over here or not?
We will. Yes, we will use also crab meal. There's one gentleman who locally actually manufactures a crab meal. They get all the material from a seafood processing facility. It goes through a drying process, and he hammers it in a hammer mill, and it turns it into a meal. And then we'll also use that as a fertilizer.
Okay. So how did you determine what supplement you use in your final product? Is that depending upon what your customer want, or like you have different varieties?
For the most part, when we sell our soil, the customer may use it for landscaping, they may use it for vegetable gardens. So when we put the amendments in it, we actually aim for the vegetables to do well because they actually have a higher nutrient demand than landscaping plants. So that's our goal to shoot for. So we know it's going to work for vegetables, so it's definitely going to work for landscaping plants. But if there's a specialty soil mix, so if somebody's starting seedlings, in our seedling mix, we may end up putting a higher fertilizer in there to make sure those young plants really get started a little bit faster. So it always depends upon the use, depending on what kind of fertilizers and how much of that fertilizer you're going to put into the mix.